My favorite moment, I think, does involve Marcia, because she asked Judge Jackson.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
Hello and welcome to Hysteria. I'm Erin Ryan.
And I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco.
Alyssa, President Biden is on his way to an important international summit in Brussels where a lot will be discussed. Apparently, they're considering kicking Russia out of the G20. They were already kicked out of the G8, which is why it's the G7, and several other international organizations. And the longer Russia fucks around in Ukraine, the more things are going to kick them out, basically. Mm-hmm. So my question for you is this. Did Vladimir Putin invade Ukraine because he wanted to attend fewer meetings?
I mean, I feel like he wasn't so welcome at them to begin with. So maybe he's just like, yo, this is what they're going to do. I know this is what they're going to do. And he can just like sit alone at that big table all day long now.
I know, he doesn't seem like he'd be very fun at parties or meetings.
No.
But I was just thinking, if he was like, you know what, I want to attend fewer meetings, it would have been like the new, could this meeting have been an email is, could this email have been a European ground war? Which for Vladimir Putin, yes, it could have been.
It could have been. Could have been.
Yeah. Anyway, fuck that guy.
I was just going to say, can we say fuck that? Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy.
Like, seriously. I mean, he's like a fucking horrible human
monster,
being. Like, he is
criminal.
a monster. Like, we're not making fun of him. He's a fucking terrible person.
I eagerly await the day that he has a grave so that I may dance upon it.
Yes. Agree.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Maybe it's a pilgrimage we could do together.
Oh, that'd be so fun. Hysteria field trip.
Fuck him.
Okay.
I
don't think it's too harsh. He's literally a war criminal. Okay. A lot of news going on this week. I have some personal news.
What's their personal news?
My personal news is, well, you know it, and the listeners don't because this is an audio medium, but my personal news is I'm wearing a t-shirt today that says, you look so scared for a second.
I was like, what?
What? No, my personal news is I'm wearing a t-shirt that says divorce your Republican husband. And
it's awesome.
It's cool. I bought it off Etsy because I saw a woman wearing one on TikTok and I was like, is this purchasable? And it turns out it is. But here's something about this shirt. It's a really good way to get dirty looks from men if you go out.
Who doesn't want that?
I mean, I already get them, so whatever. But I got a couple dirty looks and one guy made a comment about it when I was just like picking up coffee this morning. And my thought was like, look, dude, if your wife is a novelty t-shirt away from divorcing you, like, that's not my fault.
No.
You pushed her to the place where she was going to see a different novelty t-shirt, perhaps a bumper sticker that would have pushed her over the edge. So
either way,
blame me.
Not your fault.
Not my personal, the man's fault, probably.
But definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. So let's talk about the Ketanji Brown Jackson SCOTUS hearings. What are your takeaways from the first couple days? I know that when listeners hear this, we'll be past day 3. But what are your impressions so far?
That we don't need to do these anymore.
What do you mean?
I wouldn't say these are a productive use of anybody's time. I mean, when you get a bunch of fucking Republican, and look, let me just be clear. We've watched all the SCOTUS hearings. I would say that some Democrats didn't really perform great during the Brett Kavanaugh or Amy Coney Barrett hearings. Like, people just get super trite, and it makes everything seem trite, I think, at that point.
Right.
But I mean, look. I'm not a Republican. I'm a Democrat. So let me tell you why these suck and are stupid. And it's because everyone is auditioning for QAnon. I think all the Republicans are auditioning for QAnon's endorsement in 2024.
Yeah.
So it's not even that this is trite. It's stupid. I mean, Josh Hawley going so deep. Also, here's the thing. I want questions that candidates, nominees can actually answer. And he went so deep on this child porn case from how many fucking years ago? 10, 15 years ago? She simply couldn't have answered. Nobody's memory is that good. And then, I mean, Ted Cruz, anti-racist babies, that was one for the books. And then Marsha, Nobel laureate Blackburn. That woman is so dumb. Her questions were so stupid. And let's be honest, no amount of, Judge Jackson, you are so incredible. You are so smart and articulate. God, someone tell them to stop using that word. And you're so accomplished. ... Now let me insert the dumbest question that has no bearing on this hearing or life in general while we're here. And so that is my takeaway. Though my favorite moment, I think, does involve Marsha, because she asked Judge Jackson,
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of
Yeah. I think Judge Jackson's face was just like a masterclass in dealing with exhausting people.
yeah, or
just-
like Xanax.
Yeah, right. She was just sitting there just like listening, obviously, and sort of like, are you done? Like, when are you
Right.
when are
Where's
you
the
gonna be done?
question?
Yeah, and she was like rising above all the bullshittery. But Alyssa, I completely agree with you that the grandstanding at these
Ugh.
things has gotten completely out of hand. Lindsey Graham stomping, flouncing out of there. Like, come on, dude. You voted for her confirmation to the DC circuit
Right.
not long ago. Like, this is so exhausting and performative and silly. And yeah, they're all trying to get on Fox News, and they're all trying to, I feel like they should have 10 seconds to ask a question. 10 seconds per
the 30
question.
minutes, the 30 minutes is fucking terrible. Like,
Yeah.
nothing good comes of it, because also no one yields back their time.
Yeah.
Everyone uses their full 30 minutes, and it's literally to hear themselves talk.
Right. But that's the thing. I think that they should change the rules so they have to be questions, and they have
Yeah.
a limit of 20 seconds to ask the question. And if it is not a question ruled by the parliamentarian, they lose the rest of their time.
Right. And back in the day, this was only on C-SPAN. Now, do I think that we should be watching this? I do. But I think that a lot of these lawmakers are like, I'm going to be on CNN, Fox, and MSNBC all day. Let's make it good. You know?
Yeah. So I want to talk about something that really did make me feel good, though, which is the judge herself. She is so obviously the most intelligent person in the room. She's so qualified, and she's so qualified that Republicans are resorting to like the wildest, most ridiculous histrionics, trying to make the case to derail her. And there's really nothing to derail. Like, this is what she was born to do. Like, she was born to do this, and I think she's going to make such a great Supreme Court justice. And there's no indication that any Democrats are wavering on supporting her. And Lisa Murkowski still has a good head on her shoulders, so I wouldn't be surprised if she supported her. But yeah, it's just sort of like the histrionics are just tedious.
Exhausting.
I wanted to single out a moment. I'm sure that Strict Scrutiny podcast on the Crooked Network.
Yeah.
If you guys don't listen, you should listen. It's great. I'm sure they're going to be getting into this more deeply. But I wanted to single out kind of a more superficial moment. And that was at the beginning during Judge Jackson's opening statement, when she singled out her husband, Dr. Patrick Jackson, as somebody that was just a great husband and father, and, support for her.
I have no doubt that without him by my side from the very beginning of this incredible professional journey, none of this would have been possible. We met in college more than 3 decades ago, and since then, he's been the best husband, father, and friend I could ever imagine. Patrick, I love you.
We had talked about Patrick Jackson on the show before as he's a surgeon, and he used to get off of 24-hour shifts at the hospital so that he could watch his wife work.
Yes.
He was such a big fan of her. And one time somebody asked if they should get the homeless man out of the courtroom because he was so disheveled from this long shift. But he's such a huge fan of his wife. He was wiping tears away, watching her give her opening statement. He was so proud of her. The pride that man has for his incredible wife was just made me tear up a little bit. And I just was thinking, in a world of Dr. Patrick Jackson's and Marty Ginsburg's, there was no reason to settle for a Mel Gibson. You know, there is
Amen
no
to
reason
that.
no reason to settle for a Ted Cruz. We live in a world where there are Patrick Jacksons and Marty Ginsburgs. And so, you know, if you're a woman who dates men, who marries men or wants to marry a man, like, just remember that. You don't settle
Erin,
for a Ted Cruz.
Such a good flag.
Don't settle for a Ted Cruz when there's a Dr. Patrick Jackson out there. And if you don't find your Dr. Patrick Jackson, that's fine. Better with yourself than
100% cosign.
Yeah. So, so the hearings are ongoing. Nothing happened to change anybody's mind. You know, senators got to hear themselves. I also wanted to single out Senator Hirono, Mazie Hirono from Hawaii.
Yes.
Who had a great moment. One of the Republican spaghetti at the wall tactics was to paint Judge Jackson as somehow soft on child pornography. And Senator Hirono used her time to elucidate how judges that Republicans confirmed basically treated child pornographers the exact same way. That it is there are a lot of factors that go in, like Judge Jackson said, to laying out sentences. And it's very much an oversimplification to present her sentencing as like just her using her discretion.
Yes.
And like Republican appointed judges do the exact goddamn same thing. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, but you know, these people have no shame. So of course they're going to keep harping on this. Let's see. Do we have any other news today we want to talk about? Anything else?
I feel like we let Judge Jackson stand on her own.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to see her on the court.
Can't wait.
I think she's going to be a great addition to the court. First Black woman in American history on the Supreme Court, and really, really excited to see that. Joining us today is Rebecca Cokley. Rebecca is a disability rights activist and is currently the first U.S. Disability Rights Program Officer for the Ford Foundation. The program seeks to build a pipeline of diverse leadership, promote disability pride, and mobilize resources for disability rights work. Before that, Rebecca was the co-founder and director of the Disability Justice Initiative at the Center for American Progress, where she built out a progressive policy platform that protected the rights and services of people with disabilities and what they depend on for survival. She is a mom and a self-described nerd and policy wonk. You will fit right in here. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've wanted you on the show for quite some time, and I'm really, really glad that it's worked out.
The fangirling is mutual.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Well, can you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself? Like, what's the path that led you to the work that you're currently doing?
Definitely. So I had the fortune of growing up in a household with two parents with the same disability that I have, which is achondroplasia, or the most common form of dwarfism. And both of my parents were activists, which was not either of their real intention. My dad grew up the son of an ultra-conservative, super racist federal judge in Selma, Alabama. My mom was one of 9 redheaded hippie flower children outside of San Francisco. And they met in the 70s at a Little People convention. And my dad went back to Selma and threw everything he owned in the back of his 69 Camaro and drove cross country, and they eloped.
Whoa.
And both of them, I mean, my parents were very open about my dad's family history. Like, we talked about the Reverend Reeb trial, which my grandfather oversaw. We talked about the fact that my grandfather was responsible for the injunction, or what they called the John Lewis injunction, which was the ruling that said 3 or more African Americans that congregated talking about voting in Alabama could constitute a mob. And they were like, that is not the path that we're going down. And I think also being in the Bay Area at late 70s, early 80s, at the height of the AIDS epidemic, both of them worked in the disability policy space. And those were disabled folks that they were seeing being impacted. And my parents were very much like, we have to show up for other communities. That's our responsibility. And so I grew up like a politics junkie, because my parents really raised me with the notion that these are the issues we have to care about. And so watching election night returns, working for Congressman Lantos, who was my local legislator, literally meeting then State Senator Barack Obama on the rooftop of 101 Constitution Avenue at a $15 person fundraiser hosted by Ted Kennedy. Like, my path was set sort of from that point on.
Wow, that's really cool. Also, I want to watch the movie about your parents. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
that's
One of these days, definitely.
that's like that could save the rom-com as a genre, I think. So, Rebecca, according to the CDC, currently in the US, there are 61 million adults living with a disability, and globally, that's about 1 billion adults. And yet, the Americans with Disabilities Act was only signed officially into law in 1990. What did people with disabilities do before that? And can you talk to us a little bit about what the ADA means to people with disabilities?
Definitely. I think that 61 million number is important because it's important to remember that that's pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
COVID is going to result in the largest disability population boom since AIDS and HIV in the 80s and since sort of the post-Vietnam era. So we are talking like a massive, at least 10 million plus more disabled people in the US alone because of long COVID. So prior to the ADA, disabled people didn't go places. You didn't have a right to public accommodations. There was no right to captioning on television. You didn't have somebody could literally say to you, as I've had said to me, even post the ADA, we'd really like to hire you, but an organization like ours is not ambitious enough to hire someone like you. And that would be okay. My mom was denied tenure for only being able to reach the bottom 6 inches of a chalkboard, back in the pre-ADA days, even though you could use like overhead projectors, like even just the bad 70s and 80s tech existed. But the college she worked at for years was able to say, we're going to deny you tenure because our field of vision for what you're capable of is limited to the bottom 6 inches of a chalkboard.
Oh boy.
And, when you think about who we're talking about, it's a massive group. The thing I think is so beautiful about the ADA is how broad the definition is. It's any mental or physical impairment which impacts the activities of daily living for someone. So they could really vary from any of us. Like what's a daily activity for me could be different than it is for you. A record or a history of such impairment. So that protects people who are cancer survivors, veterans, et cetera, who may not be currently experiencing disability, but they went through an experience that actually disabled them, or regarded as. So people with like facial disfigurements and whatnot. So this definition is broad enough to include kids in Flint, Michigan that are like 2,800 days plus out without clean drinking water and have acquired learning disabilities because of it. It's broad enough to include women experiencing postpartum depression, people that live with gastrointestinal issues like IBS or IBD. And it's broad enough to include folks with long COVID. It really was like the original big tent policy. And when you think about what that means as a coalition and also as a political base, that's massive.
Yeah, it's crazy that it was a George H.W. Bush initiative, right?
But it's not.
Okay.
Because President Bush had lost a child to leukemia when she was 3.
Right.
He had his son, George W. Bush, as somebody living with who's in recovery because of a substance abuse disorder. Recovery counts as a disability. So he had a son with a disability. You also had Attorney General Dick Thornburgh, who had a son with an intellectual disability, who for a period of time, he was a single dad raising his 3 boys. And you had folks like Boyd and Gray also in the White House who had a personal connection to disability. So even at that time, there was an awareness. And I would actually argue that that was the last time we actually saw strong bipartisan support for civil rights legislation was the ADA. And it was also, frankly, and I will argue with my elders about this till the cows come home, the last time that disability was a bipartisan issue.
Rebecca, you mentioned long COVID. In what ways has the pandemic affected people with disabilities? And we've seen COVID characterized as a mass disabling event. Are we prepared for long COVID?
We are completely unprepared for long COVID. And let's also be real that we have a history of being unprepared for both post-viral illnesses in general. The symptoms that we're seeing exhibit themselves in long COVID have existed way prior to COVID-19. They existed through illnesses like myalgic encephalomyelitis, or what we used to call chronic fatigue syndrome. fibromyalgia, a lot of these illnesses that frankly, predominantly hysteria is a great example. Illnesses that were predominantly targeted around women and communities of color, that people were told, you're making it up. It's all in your head. You're a fraud. And many of those symptoms, exhaustion, issues around loss of sense of smell, sense of taste, brain fog, all of these things are really exhibited in what we're seeing in long COVID today. I also think that it's really interesting because in many ways, COVID made things harder for parts of the disability community. COVID also made things easier for other parts of the community. So for example, people, we have as a community asked for telework for over 30 years. And we were told that is not a reasonable accommodation. And then COVID hits. And it's so cute. The non-disabled population Columbused telework. They planted a flag and were like, we have discovered this thing called telework. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. You can work from home at your pace with the right supports and technology. And so we actually saw an increase in disability employment in a really interesting way because people were able to do their jobs from home with the supports that they needed because everybody was doing it. You had students with certain types of disabilities in school and on college, both in K through 12 and in post-secondary, who had been denied accommodations that all of a sudden could access their learning needs better. And that wasn't necessarily true for everybody, but for a certain part of the population, there was an actual gain made. And now what we're seeing happen as we start rolling back all these protections and all these enhancements that we made to our society is those people are now having the floor pulled out from under them and being told, oh, all of a sudden we can't do remote learning. I'm sorry, you can't work from home, even though you've proven that you can do the job successfully for almost 2.5 years now. That's no longer a possibility. And so it continues to be a significant issue for the community. And on the flip side, it's meant that people with autoimmune disabilities can't go outside. I was talking to somebody recently, and they were saying to me we were talking about our grantees, and they were like, oh, isn't it so great that your grantees can get back to work now? And I said, whose grantees? And they're like, well, all of our grantees. And my response was, my grantees haven't left the house in 2.5 years. My grantees are still bearing staff. And so the reality for the disability community in this moment has been just a reminder of the short memory of American society to be like, all right, that sucked. Let's move on to the next thing. And it's like, but we're still struggling. We're still being left behind in this moment.
So let's get a little bit wonky here, Rebecca, because you mentioned reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. And moving into the post-COVID world, it seems like a lot of reasonable accommodations are being rolled back, like you mentioned. Do you expect to see lawsuits under the ADA along those lines? And if those lawsuits make it all the way to the Supreme Court, there are some analysts that say that SCOTUS might weaken the ADA. So, what are your thoughts on that? And are you kind of feeling like a Cassandra here? Are you feeling optimistic? What's the temperature?
Oh, you speak my language. Alice Wong and I always talk about being a disabled oracle. We talked about seeing the pandemic coming March 2017, the minute we saw the Trump administration roll back infection control standards in nursing homes. We were like, oh, this is not good. Something is going to happen and it's going to be exponentially craptastic. And I think there's a couple of issues around the ADA. The first piece is we also need to acknowledge that even Democrats have actually moved to weaken the ADA. HR 620, which was actually passed by the House of Representatives back in 2018, was sponsored by one of my childhood heroes, even Representative Jackie Spear. And it would have rolled back the Title III provisions, the access to public accommodations for people with disabilities. So we've seen both legislative attacks as well as attacks in the court system. Most recently, there were two major cases this year, CVS versus Doe, where the plaintiffs had pharmacy insurance coverage managed by CVS. And they said that they were having problems accessing their HIV meds and related advice from pharmacists because of CVS's new rules for these medications. And CVS denied them the accommodations that they needed to be able to access their HIV meds. And so they ended up suing. And it's weird to say this, but thankfully, thankfully CVS settled because we were really terrified of it going to the Supreme Court, and even just a few weeks ago, we saw Payan versus LA County Community College District, where blind students were suing community college district for denial of accommodations, whether it be screen readers, note takers, or other forms of assistive technology that they needed to be able to access. And the courts are in such a bad place right now where literally anytime a case is brought collectively as a community, we all hold our breath and it's just like, please don't let it go further. Like, please let them settle. Please, let's actively fight to get this thing tabled, because we won't be able to hold on to the ADA the way that the court is currently structured.
Well, that's upsetting.
And I think we are going to see more cases with COVID, because I think that, there is going to be a desire, along with that desire to move on and move ahead, there's going to be a desire to not accommodate people, to continue to make the complaint that, oh, it's too expensive to accommodate people. Well, you can't really say that anymore. But I think within the disability community, one of our needs for focus moving forward is really the courts. We've seen tremendous gains in Congress. We've seen more people with disabilities elected to Congress. We've seen more disabled people self-identify once they got to Congress. Representatives Porter and Presley and Tina Snow and others, Senator Tina Snow and others have really self-identified once they've gotten in office. But they're not enough to hold the line for some of these pieces of legislation that could do a lot of harm to the community.
Rebecca, what's the biggest misconception people have about people with disabilities?
I think it's that we're fakers, takers, and money makers. That's the line that Rebecca Vallis and I tend to use. There's this conception or there's this idea out there that if you're disabled, you get all these benefits that you just announce, hi, I'm disabled. And people start throwing money at you. People start throwing rights at you. And they forget the fact that we had to legally fight for everything that we have. Nobody wants to be on public benefits. You can't, we live in a state right now where you can't have more than $2,000 in a checking account or you lose your health care if you're on SSI. You can't get married and receive public benefits or you lose your health care. Your parents can't let you live on their couch or it counts against your in-kind benefit levels and you lose your health care. I mean, I had an intern years ago that got accepted for a free ride to Harvard Law School, and he lived in Illinois. And he had to turn down the free ride because we don't have Medicaid portability in this country. And so in the state of Illinois, he got 12 hours of home care. He got somebody to help him cut up his food. He got somebody to help bathe him and get him dressed every day. In Massachusetts, he would have gotten 7. His life is forever altered. He went to a great law school. He's got a great career, but a full ride to Harvard Law, and he had to turn it down because we don't have true equality as people with disabilities. But yet I think that there is this assumption by a lot of people in society that we get whatever we want, that this isn't something, that this is not an earned civil right, that what we're getting is extra or special treatment, when it's so far from the truth.
For listeners with children, are there shows other than Sesame Street that teach a disability inclusive world?
We're actually seeing it more in different forms of media. I've actually been really impressed in comic book spaces and graphic novel spaces. This is me nerding out, to see, an increased presence of kids with disabilities. The children's author, Andrea Beatty, who does Rosie Revere, engineer, and Ada Twist, scientist. Many of those characters are coded as students with disabilities. The mayor in that town is gay and disabled, which I think is awesome. I think we're continuing to see a greater presence, but there isn't enough done. One of my grantees that I'm a huge fan of is called the Inevitable Foundation, and they're actually working to promote screenwriters with disabilities, because it's not just about having a disabled actor in a situation. If the storyline is crap, we're not communicating the right message. And so really working to get people behind the scenes, because let's be real, that's also where the power is, shaking up what some of these storylines are. And I think we've seen, there was a moment 3 weeks ago where 3 nights in a row, I saw a positive portrayal of a little person on television. And that has never happened. And there were no elves involved. I think disabled people will have full equality when we get to have our really crappy Hallmark holiday movie. Like when, everybody sits there and is like, oh, there's a Latino Hallmark movie this year. Oh, there's an African American Hallmark movie this year. Oh, there's an LGBT cheesy Christmas movie. When we get ours, then I think we'll have achieved something.
Oh, I would 100% watch that. That sounds great. You should run Hollywood.
I'm already working on writing one.
Okay, so I don't want to take too much more of your time, Rebecca, but because it's Women's History Month, who is a woman disability rights activist from history who you think our listeners should know about, and what makes her so cool?
To me, one of the most important disabled women in history is Fannie Lou Hamer. Often her disability is written out, but Fannie Lou had polio. And it actually led to her being involuntarily sterilized without her knowledge and against her will. And so when she would protest, she would specifically fall in such a way to fold in the right side of her body, which was the side that was impacted. Women with disabilities still really struggle with our access to our reproductive rights. When I had my daughter, shortly after I left the White House in 2013, the anesthesiologist asked my OBGYN if she was going to sterilize me. I was laying on the back. I was laying on the operating table at Sibley Hospital. And he said, so while you're down there, you're just going to take care of things. People like her don't need to have more kids.
What in the name of fuck?
That was pretty much my moment of what the fuck. Like, I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. And my husband is behind me, like being like, calm down. We're going to this is okay. And my OB, who I love to death, gave him the death stare and was like, you can leave now. I want to see, send in your attending and I'm going to speak with him after this. Your behavior is completely inappropriate. But I mean, the case Buck v. Bell, which allows the involuntary sterilization of disabled people, is still law. Kavanaugh used it in his confirmation hearing. He talked about upholding the Doe versus DC case, which forced 2 disabled women in DC that were institutionalized to have abortions without their knowledge and their will. And, to me, the fact that Fannie Lou Hamer went through that all the way back in the 40s and 50s, and the fact that when she decided to have kids, she went back and told her doctor, I keep trying to get pregnant and I can't get pregnant. And they're like, oh, you can't get pregnant because we sterilized you. Because people like you, a Black woman with a disability, don't need to have kids. The fact that is still happening today and that court case is still out there still shows how far we really need to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Buck v. Bell, anything written about it is the most depressing thing that you will read all day. It is.
We will have something exciting to share on it later this year. We're working on something really sneaky and cool.
Ooh, sneaky. Well, you're going to have to come back on the show, Rebecca, when you can talk about the sneaky cool thing you're working on when it comes to Buck v. Bell, because we would love to talk to you about it.
Definitely. Count me in.
All right. Rebecca Cokley, thank you so much for joining us.